The story that takes us into a conversation today is on The Nation this morning, and Trump's in-law tours Kenya, the Great Lakes, with eye on Congo minerals. Masad Boulos, the new senior advisor for Africa at the United States State Department, will be visiting Kenya and the Great Lakes region starting this week. It's on page 2, and we look into a few more details because this sets the stage for the conversation that we are having in this hour. So he comes in and with an eye on Congo's minerals, where everybody else has had their eye as well. He's a senior advisor to the president on Arab and Middle East affairs with focus on Lebanon, the country he left as a teenager. He will visit the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, Kenya and Uganda from today. Senior advisor Boulos and the team will meet heads of state and business leaders to advance efforts for durable peace in Eastern DR Congo and promote United States private sector investment in the region. And do what? Promote sector investment, United States private sector investment in the region otherwise known as DR Congo, and in terms of what it has to offer. I don't see a difference between visits that take place dressed up in a suit and a briefcase from visits that took place for a lot of other African countries 100 years ago, 150 years ago, 110 years ago, 90 years ago. These things happened, and what colonialism did at the time essentially was not a come and let me see my brothers on the other side of the pond and see what they look like. No, it wasn't. There was the realization when we are told that people like, what was his name? Columbus, who found America as though there was no one there, or Vasco da Gama, who came and landed on the port here and found Kenya, rather parts of what East Africa looked like, as though there were no people there who had inhabited the lands before and were not operating in intricate trade routes, who were not operating in having found out certain sciences, and people as though they were not operating in finding out certain traditional ways of doing things that still form the basis of what we use as modern day technology, came from here. So those things happened. Now, when they found these things, and I'm going to continue putting found in inverted quotes, that when they found, they now sent word very quickly back and said, hey, guys, You guys, I found a place off the coast of this Indian Ocean. There's a land that has spices. It's fantastic. There's a land that has precious stones. It's amazing. There's a land which is just near the port. We can use this. There's a land just close to the sea. We can use this and create an advantage point for us. There's a land even deeper inland where you will find minerals untold, that there is this precious metal that we will then call gold, that there's something that we can use for technology called bauxite, that there's in another land there's this blue stone, green stone in some cases called tanzanite, that we can use it. They sent word back, and then the people came in droves.
There is soil in Kenya where we can grow tea and coffee and export it back home because our weather does not allow.
Now, when the colonialists came, do you think that they came here because they didn't have what to do where they came from, or that they were bored and they said, okay, let's just go see what it's going to be like to live in Africa for the next 40 years? No. They came to extract. They came to take whatever they needed so that they could go back. They also knew that they needed to keep the attention of the people, so they gave you the education and the religion. Whatever you choose to stay with, that is up to you. They used the elements of divide and rule, and it worked very well for many cases. They picked individuals from the people that they were going to either manipulate, or that they were going to, I guess it's still manipulation, that they were going to give positions who would then be able to give them the vantage and access points towards what they wanted to do. I want you to tell me if you see in principle a difference between what happened then when they landed on the shores of many countries of who we know them today, and what we see today when people land or come off planes and land here and tell you that they want to do what? They want to secure American private sector investment interests. Is there a difference between what happened then and what happens today?
Yes.
What's the difference?
Time.
That's just about it?
Time and awareness and exposure. In the times gone by, everything that the colonialists brought was new. New. And in the spirit that human beings have embraced over time, new often meant better. When you go beyond the fear and the suspicion, it becomes better, because you suddenly realize that there are things you can do with greater ease than you previously could. Okay? But beyond that, there is something called the Western education, which has enabled us to speak the language that we are speaking to the point where we can all understand each other. Now, instead of it being a cohesive force, it became a force of exploitation. Because when you speak the language that someone else has brought to you, and it dominates the things you do, that person has actually dominated you. In case you didn't know, they have dominated
They
you.
have.
Now, but there's a flip side to this particular coin. You can flip it. The very tool that is used against you can be the very tool that you use to better your circumstances. Because you now have, through that tool, the mind of the individual who brought it to you, because you can then have a clearer understanding of how they go about their business. We have failed to understand what the colonialists did to benefit them, insofar as we only took in the very violent forms of governance that they unleashed on the natives of the countries they went to the point of even decimating entire communities. But instead of looking at the thinking behind it and the self-interest that they put ahead of everything, we decided to look inward to the benefits that would satisfy a few. Now, that hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. In fact, it's worsened, because we are now even more aware of the value of the things we have. Before, we knew there was value, but not as much as we now do.
No.
And in a global economy, that awareness is even greater. Okay? So there is a difference.
There is a difference.
There is a difference. And let me just read what has been written here. Now, the Trump administration prioritizes transactional relationships, a shift from multilateralism partnership with assistance, trade and climate agreements now uncertain. Now, his focus will be limited to how Africa fits in his broader geopolitical objectives, especially considering US-China rivalry. Now, President Trump's interest in the DR Congo is attributed to the country's minerals, with most critical metals for energy and technology found there. Last month, the State Department said it was ready to explore critical mineral partnerships with Kinshasa after a Congolese senator contacted American officials to pitch minerals for security agreement.
It's very simple.
Yes.
It's very simple. So here you are, and you would imagine that there has been conflict in the DR Congo for the last 40 years, right? That when we talk about disallowing the leadership of its own people, whether you want to talk about Patrice Lumumba being killed in the manner in which he was, whether you want to talk about then the micromanaging of governance that took place, and just from leader to leader to leader to leader, do you really think that it was for anything else apart from what we see today? The control of resources, making sure or to ensure that resources left DR Congo, whether you were going to give a pittance for them, and made its way to the countries that needed it for the needs that you talk about today, energy and technology. Today hasn't changed. That's how it was 40 years ago. That's what it is today. When we talk about wars, when we talk about conflict, how many conflicts take place around Africa?
How many
just here to the
conflicts
north
exist in?
Just here to the north, there's a conflict that is taking place in Sudan. There is one that's on its brink in South Sudan. The conflict and the humanitarian crisis that's taking place in Sudan is easily the worst in the world to date. Do you see that people who are scrambling about and running to Sudan to say, let's have peace here? Why? Because it's clear, and we can be bold enough to say it, that there's no significant benefit that you would then be able to get if you were there. Sure, we know that the business of war is not cheap, and we know that there are people who are making sure that even before, when we saw a more violent conflict, that it was said that there are those who were fueling the conflict by providing arms I mean, there are entire books that have been written about it. There are films that have been made about it, and that continues to be true, that somebody benefits from the prolonging of these conflicts. But if you want to look at examples of other things that have happened on the continent, for example, where conflicts took place and nobody was bothered to come in and check, I bet you my bottom dollar that if we see a conflict area where there is resource untold, you will see people going there. Everybody and their uncle has been talking about, well, let's make sure that we sort out the conflict in DRC. No, you don't want to sort it out, because in that chaos, there is a there are beneficiaries. In that chaos, there's somebody who benefits. Why come out suddenly in 2025 and say, well, let's have a conversation about, our private investments and let's see how we can talk about it? You want a situation where people are remaining docile so that you can take what they have. These are the things that we talk about. And the question is, when will we wake up to these realities? Yeah. When will we wake up and say that, the things that we did when we were looking at colonialism in the 40s towards the 50s, the things that we did then as would-be leaders seems to be the same things that we are doing today. That you are allowing folks to come in and run roughshod, essentially, in the manner in which they want to, without taking responsibility. So when you asked the question earlier about whether they care about the people, no. There are means to an end. Maybe we can build a school here. Maybe we can, we can tell you that we care about you, but it doesn't really matter. Yeah. We will come. What we need, we will get, and we will leave. Yeah. We will have somebody on the ground who essentially, today we can even call them unilateral global facilitators, because that is exactly what they do. Yeah. They allow you in, we have a conversation, you get what you want, and then you go. You keep the relationship constant so that we can continue to get what we need to furnish our what? To furnish our global technological needs for 2025 and moving forward. Yeah. It hasn't, in that respect, it has not changed. When will we wake up to the reality that we cannot continue like this? And I'm saying until the swamp is drained, until you have significant leadership that understands exactly what's going on and is not ready to pawn its people away and their livelihoods for 30 pieces of silver.
When we talk about Trump is walking away from multilateralism, but what exactly does that mean? This means it refers to a system of international relations where multiple countries work together on shared issues, often through international organizations, treaties, or agreements. But here we're moving from multilateralism to transactional business, where we're talking in terms of, okay, fine, you want security? Perhaps I might supply you with weapons that you need to fight. And in return, I take your cobalt. I will take your fine minerals to go create my energy and whatever. It is not a question of let's sit on the table and work on how we're going to make sure that your country does better. But that notwithstanding, again, we go back to our very own leaders who have turned the continent, have turned our resources to being their easy way out of poverty.
I actually like Trump's approach to this because it's honest.
Yes.
There's no multilateralism, quadruple multilateralism, none of that stuff. You have minerals.
We want
the minerals.
Yes.
Now let's see what we can do for you. It is straightforward, is up front. So
there's even no table. There's no table for discussion. Table, no.
He has told you. Now it's up to you.
Yeah.
You see, the thing the colonialists did that perhaps we don't often give sufficient credit is he gave us, and I said it earlier, the tool. It's called the language, which was then accompanied by an education which was formed for their own. We have that education. We have the exposure because we visited their countries. Some of us have even studied in their countries. So you cannot say you do not know how these people think.
Yeah.
You do.
You do.
You only need to look at the African diaspora and look at the number of Africans who live outside their countries and are in those Western countries or around the world. There are very many. We know of many who have gone and then come back home. The point is this. It isn't sufficient for a certain number. It is important that the number of people who get educated. For instance, right now, have you ever asked yourself why it is universities in the Western world are always busy hawking the universities? Those universities were not built for us. It was built for them.
Yes.
Okay? Why? Because foreign students pay. And what foreign students pay is not the same amount as what the locals pay. And it also tells you that the locals are perhaps not that keen on that education that is being offered. They can do other things, and they're happy to do other things. It is the African who is keen. Now, that level of keenness to excel in a foreign country, and we do as Africans, we excel.
And surpass expectations.
Exactly, because you are up against a stacked deck. So you really have to be exceptional for you to stand out.
Yeah.
Now, if that happens there, it happens because the opportunity to excel is provided. If it's academia, if it's your work will speak for you.
For you, yes.
Yes. Here on this continent, your tribe speaks for you generally.
Yeah.
Your expertise will speak for you in certain spheres where there isn't much of an option. But at the end of the day, the cronyism with which we approach our business guarantees that we don't always have our best in the positions that we require the best.
You speak of a case which has just rung a bell, and I have a cousin who studied in Ohio, and she's a physicist.
Ohio.
Ohio. Yes.
Ohio. That one.
Yep. She passed, actually. She was invited by the university to study there, full scholarship, fully paid and whatnot. So she's a physicist and she's a pharmacist at the same time. So at one point she visited the country, and I was like, why don't you think of just coming back and doing whatever it is you're doing there here? The first question she asked is, to come do that where? Which institutions do you have that can give me the money I'm getting from the US here? And the American government as well has guaranteed her presence there by ensuring that it is difficult for her to come back home because it invested in her education. So the great mind that she has is a property and a reserve for the United States.
That same United States has grown and expanded, has become a power.
Yeah.
They have never been shy to bring in expertise.
Yes.
They have never been shy to adopt and to welcome expertise. They are not.
Yes.
It doesn't matter which country you come from. Why do you think the Silicon Valley is full of people from India?
Absolutely.
Okay? They are not shy. So long as you have expertise that they know will help their cause, they are not shy.
Yes.
So they don't stifle it.
No.
Yeah.
In the same vein, they are also very aware, very, very aware that there are folks who are in it for their personal gain.
Yes.
And those are the folks that they now speak to directly because they will give them direct access to these things that they want. So what do? They blind you. Look, the whole phenomenon of Hollywood itself, it was built on the idea that you needed to give the American people something shiny to play with.
Something to lull them.
Yeah.
So you give them that over here, and then on the eastern side of things, you make sure that you're forming your government. Because where did governments form in the United States?
Yeah.
They formed on the eastern continental US, on that side. So you send them out to the west and make them know that their dreams can come true in Hollywood. Everybody wants to go out and be an actor.
Yeah.
So they went out there. And then on this side of things, in the Big Apple, there was New York and there was the dazzling lights and all of this. But in the Mid-East, they formed government. They formed the groups. They formed the collegiate, where they were going to decide how governments then were going to be formed, how policy was going to be crafted, how they were going to go into different parts of the world. When you're over here playing with your shiny new toy and your disco lights over here, they knew exactly what they were going to do. And they were deliberate about it. That same deliberateness is what we see that they carry out into the world today. You think Bullis is coming here because he wants to see what the Great Lakes looks like?
Or to visit the gorillas.
Or to visit the chimps in Uganda. You think he wants to come and see what the white sands of Diani look like and then enjoy a day under an umbrella? For crying out loud. They also know the individuals that they can speak to.
Yes.
Just like they knew when they went to the coast of Ghana and Nigeria. Just like they knew when they looked into the slave trade, on the continental slave trade. They knew the people in the communities that they could approach who would give them the best and the strongest slaves. They knew. Today in 2025, they know the leaders that they can go to and say, you know what? How about you let us in? Let me come and tour for a couple of days and let me go over here and talk about my private sector investment. What's the difference? Nada.
And as they knock, they'll say, look, just so that you understand that our intentions are serious, here's a little something for you.
Here's something for you.
Yeah. Because what they're coming for is lithium, cobalt, uranium. Talk about the industries that these will touch. They touch about battery, they talk about minerals to build engines in cars, and also batteries for electric vehicles. They are one of the biggest producers of these, and for a very long time these minerals have been received from China, but we know the geopolitics that is happening with China. Therefore, where do you go to? The soft targets. Because even the recent conversation with Ukraine, it was based off what? You have to give us your minerals for us to give you our bombs.
Very, very true. So then when are we going to wake up and realize that the potential is right in our hands? And so even when we are fully aware of why somebody has come knocking on your door, then I have to take it and I have to turn it round to us and say, we as African nations, we fall way beyond the mark. That even if somebody comes and says, well, these people are here to take your resources and to shake your hand, they give you something in one hand while they take something from the other. But the question is, what are we doing to counter it? That it doesn't make sense to me. We always talk about the hang-ups or the hangovers of colonialism, which in my opinion are quite valid in terms of reasons as to why there's a stagnated progression or development. I understand that. But it's been gone for a while.
60 years in Kenya plus.
I mean, the original colonialization that we talk about, you got flag independence, you got other forms of independence, and then you started having your own governments made up primarily by your own people, primarily and in whole by your own people. But we still are hanging on to these things. That those community leaders that were used for certain things have found their way into government and are still ruling the roost today. We know that the only way for you to be able to hit in terms of economic development is by your own industries and manufacturing. We know that. It is a no-brainer. We understand that. We've seen it. It happens. That's just the order of the world. What stops us? Why is our development why are we not able to click in on our development agenda? And this is what leaders ought to look at. And I keep saying, you have no business looking outside when inside it's a mess.
Yeah.
What are we doing? That we still today in nations whereby people have gone to international courts for stashing away billions, that we have situations where there's no sanitation, as basic as that. That we have
there's no running water.
There's no running water. There's no pipage. That people that there are people who go to in our nations today. That there are people who go to quarries and they fetch dirty water and they filter it through a cloth and it's cloudy at best, and that's what they drink today. And then you want to tell me, why we've not been able to develop is because we are colonized and we only got independence in 1960 and we're still dealing with those hang-ups. That is what we have the audacity to open our mouths and say.
It's actually true, though. It's actually true. We have the audacity because we actually have been only independent for 60 odd years.
Okay.
Latin American countries have also been independent for roughly the same, and their problems are not very dissimilar to ours. And the Europeans, those guys figured out how to have lasting peace probably in the last 100 years. For some 2,000 years before then, man, these fellows were chopping each other up and doing all sorts of crazy things for
brutally.
the longest time. But having said that, and where you are right, that explanation is just a sentence and you pause there. It cannot be the complete explanation why and it cannot satisfy the problem that we seek. But Kenya, we have a solution actually. We have a constitution. That sort of constitution is what gives you the foundation on which you can build the things we're talking about.
Yes.
Because leaders are elected. Okay? Now, in this job we're doing, if we're not performing, we will go and look for other things.
Yes, no. That's true.
As someone suggested to me the other day that perhaps I should consider going to look after cows. Yes, it's an occupation.
Okay.
The only thing is I need to have the cows first.
To start,
Yes.
yeah.
That's where I was heading.
Yes, but the point was well made.
Yes.
You have to have a plan B. Why? If you are not meeting the targets, if you are not doing what you're supposed to do, if you are not ensuring that the conversations are at the highest possible level, then somebody else who can do that very thing that is required will be looked for.
Yes.
Okay? We are loath to not only hold our leaders to account, but to get rid of them when they're not performing.
There is where City the conversation should be getting rid of them when they are not performing.
Yes.
Because, you see, we live in a country where just the other day in Migori County, Rongo to be specific, there was a road that was just being constructed, and there were reports of gold deposits just by the road. If you go further down to Makelda, there is a mine where people actually go in and mine gold and trade in it. If you go down to Kakamega, the same story. You hear of mine shafts each and every single day collapsing and people dying in them. We ask, what is our government doing to ensure that these resources are exploited by us, that they are developed by us, that we process them in such a way that they are national resources that we protect with our might? Unfortunately, our governments do not do that. If you look at in Burkina Faso, it is happening. It is a story, it is a subject, it is an example that we can take. When will other African leaders wake up and say, we must do right by the people?
They won't.
Okay, so,
they won't.
Let's be optimistic for once.
No, they won't. The reason why I said Kenya has a solution, and the solution is our constitution, the people need to know that just as they constitutionally elect their leaders, they should be able to constitutionally get rid of them. And that's any leader. It does not matter. So long as you are elected to office, there must be a way in which, under our constitution, provides for it.
Okay. Is it too much? No. I'm actually asking that the many things, because we can list them.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what country. I think about my country, Nigeria, right? And I think about the 200 million people that are there, and I think about the abject poverty of people who are sitting literally on black gold. That there are parts of Nigeria deep in the rainforest whereby you stick your finger in the ground and it comes out black.
Black, yes.
Because it's sitting on oil undiscovered till today. This is in Nigeria. And then I think about the water cities of Nigeria as well, whereby people, because they live in the lagoon area, they're living on water, and that there is nothing that has been done in terms of development for proper living. We have a constitution, just in case you didn't know, we have a constitution that guarantees the protection of livelihoods of the people of Nigeria. But that we have a leadership which is struggling to then even be able to make sense of things. That we live in a continent whereby the same Libya had made fuel as cheap as $6 for its people, and that ensured that you go all the way from preschool to university for free. On this continent, it happened. Healthcare was free. That their crude, the thing about the oil, the crude, which is also available in Nigeria, is that it was so smooth that the refinery process was shortened. So that's the kind of crude that the world wants to buy.
It was the finest in the world.
It's the finest, okay? So my question is, maybe it's too much. And when I say too much, I say maybe the responsibility is too much. Maybe there's too much poverty. Maybe there is too much in terms of responsibility that needs to be done. There are too many people, so we cannot provide water. There are too many people, so we don't eat the whole thing and don't provide electricity. There is too much in terms. Maybe it's too much and we're not able to handle it because the responsibility is so great and there's not enough. There is no explanation other than that for me. That maybe there are too many balls in the air. We can't educate all our children. We can't provide clean water for all of them. We can't provide access to health. We can't provide power. We can't just do our job. Maybe it's too much.
I think
it's too much. That's the problem.
What is too much is we have too much aloof leaders who we need to get rid of.
Actually, the leaders are not aloof, Dennis. These leaders have understood that they can get away with the things they're doing. And we have allowed them to.
So are we aloof?
We have encouraged them. No. We are stupefied. When you're buffeted with problems left, right, and center, and you can barely breathe, man, there isn't much room in your brain to think about very many things. Any little improvement for you is a hallelujah moment. Let me go back to what I said about the Constitution. What is it that has made Americans different from other people, apart from being very loud? they are Americans.
First.
And they will tell you they will tell you.
America.
And they know their rights.
Yes.
And they will remind you.
Yeah.
And they will tell you. When you have a citizenry that understands that there's a rule of law, and they are not afraid to say, excuse me, this is not right. Leaders then understand that they will not get away. On this continent, it is established that leaders tend to get away with anything they do, even if it works to the detriment of the citizenry.
City, see, this thing, if you don't know by now, really bothers me.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, that we'd heard the sounds of generators the whole day, and I would be like, okay, this is great. Then there would be, lights would come on, and then part of the national electricity company was privatized. And the people who accessed private power had power 24 hours a day, even 8 days a week. 8. So then I started to wonder, these people who have this private power, they have power all the time. It's a very simple thing. They pay, you have power. Or you have power, then at the end of the period, you pay. So I started to ask myself, who owns this thing? And I think I was about 10 years old. Who owns this thing that people who are connected to the national grid don't have power, but these people who have brought power from wherever else they're bringing it from have power? What is this thing? And if you find it, that same principle resonates through and through, whereby there are people who have opened private schools in Nigeria from here till Timbuktu. Private schools are ruling the roost now, and they're offering optimum education, and it's being paid for. The public system on its knees. There are people who within the private sector are offering human resource, who are offering training on soft skills and things like that, but they are flourishing.
In the same country.
In the same country. The same citizens of the same stock. So what Kool-Aid are you drinking when you get into the public? What happens under government? What happens? I'm telling you, that's what I'm saying. Maybe it's too much.
What's the culture in government?
What is the problem?
What is the culture in our government?
Because why can you flourish in the private sector in the same country with the same people, made of the same stock, but somehow in the public sector you get in and you put your coat on the chair and then you disappear. They see you at 4 o'clock, you come back later, and then you wonder why you have a dirty river running through the city. You wonder why there's no piped water. You wonder why their estates since 1980 have opened their tap and have never seen water running through it. You wonder why you don't have electricity drop from here to there. But if you work in the private sector, somehow these things seem to work. It's not aliens who are running the private sector, it's the same
locals,
people. So what is the problem? If we decided today that there is a woman who used to live in the US and came to Kenya, and now has a franchise of paints.
Yes.
She mixes her own paint.
Yes.
And she's now competing with
the big
boys who are external players. A Kenyan of Kenyan descent, of the same stock as everybody else, is doing the thing and has franchise all over this country. What am I saying? We know what to do. We do not do it, but we expect that we will develop. There's a problem. That's why I was telling you, bomb the thing, drain the swamp, start from the beginning.
There is a lady as well who just came back from the US as well. She's coming and she's connecting the black Africans from the West to come back and settle back home. She's linking them with opportunities, with how to purchase land and whatnot. She's competing with the national body, Magical Kenya, head to head, because she's communicating the language they understand. She's not targeting the white man. She's targeting the black people who want to invest and come back home. We know, yes, I agree with you. We know what we need to do.
What is our problem? No, there's got to be something. You can't tell me that we don't have enough resources, because people are coming here to get them. People are coming to get them.
And we're even exporting it.
Yeah, City. So the thing is, if you look at, let's take America, for example. America was built off its black oil, right? It's black gold. Africa has abundance of the same. What stops us from taking advantage of it?
Because we want to eat it. A few people want to eat it.
Because it doesn't make sense today that Nigeria, with all the oil that it has, it is exporting and then importing.
No, thank God for Aliko Dangote, because now Dangote has now brought a refinery, so we praise the name of the Lord because we are starting something like that. But you know what? I ask a question that if you go to Lagos today, there's a hum over the city that if you sit quietly, even with the madness of our Lagosians, there's a hum over the city. What does that mean? That there are generators that are just running 24 hours a day. But you know what? There are 6 people. Nigeria has 200 million people. But there are 6 people who run the organization for importation of generators. There is big business there because everybody, you build a house today, you have an inlet for a generator because we don't have the power. So that's what I'm saying. Somebody is so bright that they say, let's manipulate and manage this thing. Can we provide power? Yes, we can. Do we have the infrastructure? Yes, we can. My father, a man, a Nigerian, laid down the infrastructure for telecommunications countrywide in Nigeria. They didn't bring somebody from outside to do it. Just like you're saying, he went and got the education and came back and they said, this man, we want him to come and lead the team that's going to lay down the telecommunications infrastructure in the country. Then what do you do with it? You botch it after that.
You know the difference here and do? Countries have that policy of taking people out of the country.
Yes.
China, case in point. Let's just talk about the Asian tigers in that region. You go, but they have a plan for you.
You come back.
Even if you stay there, they still have a plan for you. But if you come back, it is for a very good reason. They have a plan. Now, the plan we have in this country, if you observe, is private sector is huge. Private sector is huge because the individuals have figured out, somehow working with the government may not necessarily benefit me very much. Let me do something on my own. That is why we have a growth in the education sector, we have a growth in the health sector. Okay? Services that the government should be providing. The growth tells you, again, of the enterprise and a people who will not sit back and simply say, oh, this is our lot. You ask, what is our problem? Our problem is the mistaken idea that when you speak the truth to power, that you are being disrespectful.
Yes.
When someone is being disrespectful, it's clear. The way they say it, the manner they use it, it's clear. But when someone simply says it, they're not being disrespectful. They're telling you, this is what I am observing, this is what you have done. That's all they're saying. But the disease is when people get into leadership, this is now the poison chalice when it comes to power, which is unchecked. The tendency towards dictatorialism is huge. That is just human nature. Somebody has power which is not checked, or they know that it will not be checked. It is very rare that they will actually work in the interest of the majority of their citizenry. No, they will work for the interest of a few. That's what they do.
You know why when folks go into rehab, they get them onto the cold turkey method? Is because you realize that this thing that you're doing is that you're causing a danger to yourself, and that you have been a repetitive nature of this invitation of danger over and over and over again. And so they say the only way for us to be able to do this is to remove you from that situation. You're going to go through withdrawal. You're going to have some bad days. We're going to flush out your system. We're going to make sure that you get to the point whereby you're at zero, and then we're going to start to build from there. That is exactly what needs to happen with us. That we need to get away from this habitual danger that we've been in, and that we're asking ourselves the question is, why can't we develop? Why is it that every day that guy Moody is telling us that we are least developing, second developing, underdeveloping, what CT calls it generational banana republic? They can continue to ascribe those things to us because we're not even at the table. We are not even under the table where the crumbs are, because in your backyard you're not sorting it out. We need a cold turkey revolution whereby everything is stopped and you say, you know what, where are we? You wake up the next morning and you have a banging headache and you're saying you want to reach for that thing, but it's nowhere to be found. You're going to go through the period whereby there will be no money, there will be no resources, but you know what? You're building on something. That is what we need. We need a reset. We need a reset. And I'm not even saying follow the example that who has given you. After all, I see a country, when we talk about political progression, and you can say that you can redefine your own democracy. What does it mean to you? You can redefine your own development. That we shouldn't have people who are living below the dignity spectrum. We shouldn't have that. We shouldn't have children who can afford to go to school. We shouldn't. You shouldn't go to hospital when they've told you that you can. And I keep saying that these things, these are the basics. If we haven't got our basics sorted, we are nowhere on development. We are not, and that's the truth. When we come to truth with reality, is that not one of the things that in this same rehab, is that not what they ask you? There are certain things you cannot deny. You have to come to terms with it. We must come to terms with where we are, and we should stop this pussyfooting around issues. Call it as they are, fix the thing, and let's go.
Do you know one of the reasons why the situation persists? Because it isn't all entirely bad. Every once in a while,
there's some good spots.
Yes, and that is what gives you hope that it will change. Certain things change in that manner by you wishing and hoping. Other changes have to be brought about.
Yes.
You see, living by the rule of the law yourself, forget the politicians for a second. You adhering to the rule of the law and understanding that it comes with a burden as well. If you refuse to bribe a policeman, what do you think will happen to you?
They'll take you to court.
Precisely.
Yes.
But you wouldn't die.
But you wouldn't die.
Precisely. I have not forgotten how when the Kibaki government came in, the guy called Michuki was in charge of transport, and he laid down the law and said, you Matatu guys, you are going to do exactly what I tell you. They believed they had the power and they thought they would go on strike. They did. The Wananchi said, it is okay, we will walk. We will walk. That's the case.
We will carpool.
This one,
we will find a way.
We will find a way. Do not worry. We will find a way, and we will do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
What that tells you, that the citizenry had been waiting and hoping for somebody.
For something.
Yes,
and
they saw it and they said, we are supporting this thing. Do you know what happened next? We saw police being arrested by citizens for asking or taking bribes. We saw.
Yes.
The citizens, it's a yoke that they had been carrying for a long time, and they're carrying it now. It's even heavier. But the need to have the example being set from the top is lacking. And when I say top, from everywhere.
Yes.
So, and people are afraid to stand on their own because you'll be isolated. But one saw, when a stand was made, believe me, many things changed. You couldn't get a passport without going through God knows what. It became easy. You couldn't get a loan until you God knows did what. It became easy. Everything became simple. It was made simple. Now, that was the one abiding example you keep giving of someone intentionally building the economy. And you saw what that did. We saw.
At some point, he also went into environment, and Kenyans actually believed that at some point we could swim in Nairobi River.
Yes.
We believed and trusted that Mishuki would deliver.
It's important that we have these conversations so they are not pointless. It's important that we talk about these things and make them front and center. At one point, hopefully, that we will take the bull by the horns and actually get to where we should be going at the rate at which we should be doing it.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.